Hello and welcome to Original Lines, where we talk to original people with original ideas about the creative life. I'm your host, Laura Allen, and today we'll be talking with Brian Lane. Brian is a printmaker, photographer, and co-founder of Print Zero, a full printmaking studio here in Seattle. Hello, Brian, and welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, Brian, well, tell us a little bit about what it is that you do. You sound like you do a lot of things. You have a lot of hats.
Yeah, well, so in regards to art at least, I run Print Zero Studios, which basically means I've just created a space where people can come and do their printmaking. So it might be woodblock, screen print, etching, letterpress. And so I've built this space up over 8, 9, 10 years with the idea that I just want to have an affordable space that artists can come and do printmaking. And since that's kind of a hard thing to find around Seattle. But then I also am a photographer. I make prints. I also am the board president for Seattle Print Arts, which is our local printmaking organization with about 200 members. I used to curate art shows at local venues. And then I have a full-time day job that has nothing to do with art or fun. So, yeah, many hats, doing the hustle.
Yeah.
And I hoard art too, so I'm always like looking for art and artists, and yeah, it's pretty much I have a day job, and then my life is just art the rest of the time.
Yep. No. Well, just so you know, Brian did bring in a small hoard. It's not a large hoard, but a small hoard of art from one of his projects. We'll talk about it here in a little bit, But yeah, so why did you choose photography and printmaking?
So when I was in college about 20 years ago, for some reason when I was a kid, I actually was into drawing and whatnot. I don't know, I didn't get it from my parents because neither one of them were artists. A couple of my brothers, they might have drawn a little bit, but for some reason, probably through just, I don't know, like elementary art school program, I got into drawing and whatnot. So when I was in high school down in Auburn, it was like a graphic design program, a year-long class. So I thought I wanted to be a graphic designer when I grew up. And then I went to community college, did art classes there, and took my first photography class and really fell in love with it. Loved the darkroom. Was shooting black and white. This is long before we had digital cameras. So you actually had to learn the hands-on process. So then when I went to the University of Washington, I thought I was going to be a graphic designer. And then no offense to graphic designers out there, but I did not like the people involved in the program. It seemed very, I don't know, it didn't seem so much creative as it did very competitive, and you weren't making art. You were being given assignments, and then there was no upside to what you were doing because it was just, nope, you can do that better, or why'd you do that? That doesn't make sense. And they had just brought in computers and using Photoshop, allowing that in the first intro level class. And I just realized I didn't like it at all.
Yeah.
And so I happened to take a printmaking class, and I didn't know what works on paper was supposed to be about. So I took that class, and instantly fell in love with it. Went back to try to do graphic design one more time. And at that point, I was having so much fun with printmaking. And so I became a printmaking major. And then I got done with printmaking in 2000. And 3 months later, enrolled in the photography program at UW for the evening classes. And the work that I started doing in there, I'm still doing. Like the same body of work I've been doing for 15 years, and it's sort of had little moments where it's grown and become another version of what I had been doing. But you see the through line. So it was probably the best thing that I could have done, walking away from the graphic design idea and just focusing on fine art, because then it's fed into all the other things I do in my life in terms of facilitating art opportunities and being involved in the art community.
Right.
I would have never had any of that in graphic design.
Yeah.
I might be making more money.
Right.
And living in a bigger apartment or something, but I don't know, maybe not.
Well, I mean, I've heard conflicting advice. I mean, some people say that it's best to, to have the day job that's unrelated. I've heard this advice for writers too.
Oh, yeah.
That it's almost better in some ways to have the day job that's unrelated to art than trying to get a job that's sort of peripheral, like doing museum studies or whatever, because then you never have any time or creative energy for your actual own art. It's kind of when you have the big separation, if you are like an accountant and then you can come home and just write, it's a big separation. You have your whole life, but I guess it works different for different people. But
yeah, I think my family has a commercial bindery, and then my brothers and I had an offshoot business, and it doesn't have anything to do with art or fun. It's kind of you do it to pay the bills, and then there's a little bit of flexibility in that job to allow for the art to take more importance at times.
Yeah.
So that's the upside of having a job that you maybe don't love.
Right.
But at the same time, it has allowed me to do a lot of other things that a regular 9-to-5 or a more stringent sort of job would allow. And it's paid the bills, enough. I'm at a point in my life right now where I really would like to just be completely immersed in art. And so I'm trying to figure out what that job is. And, some of the stuff I've been doing recently with kids, I'm looking more seriously into trying to facilitate that as a part-time job if possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then something that might pay a little more or be a little more consistent. So.
Yeah. I mean, you seem to really. I recently had the privilege of watching Brian work with the kids out at the Auburn Summerfest. You seem like you were having a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's interesting because kids bring a whole different energy. You have to approach them differently, and you're making art. You're doing something fun and something creative, but you're taking the critical part of art making out, and you're doing something to you're bringing the fun back into it.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of tricking the kids into learning something and being creative and being engaged by just doing this project that they can interact with, they can draw, they can print. But it's inspired me in what I'm wanting to do on my own. But it's a project that only happened because I had to try to think like a kid. Or if I were a kid, what would make me interested in that art thing that you're doing? And kids don't like being talked down to. They like to be talked to or talked with. And so that's something that I've been also really aware of. So I find that I can kind of engage with the kids and kind of chide them a little bit when I need to and kind of joke with them, and they respond really well to it. But it's also, I kind of let them drive what's going on too, and I think that's been a really kind of fun aspect of what I've been doing recently.
Well, you've also done printmaking workshops and things with adults too, right?
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit, yeah. And I know you probably act as sort of a guide with the print studio, with people that come in, right? I mean, you help if you need to. Yeah,
but I'm also really intimidated by whenever I have a new artist kind of join the studio. There's a lot of people out there who have done printmaking elsewhere, and because I don't quite know what type of printmaker I am, because I've been so busy being kind of a behind-the-scenes facilitator. Even though I've had a studio for 8 or 9 years, the joke was that I just kept moving things from place to place within the studio rather than making work.
Yeah.
I was always kind of like trying to set things up for other people. So when artists come into the studio, because it's my studio and because I've been running a studio for a long time and been involved, I think people expect that I know more about printmaking or about these techniques. And so it's like lithography is this magical thing that you have to be good at drawing, and you're drawing onto a 100, 200 pound limestone. I don't do litho. I don't draw well. There's other ways to be an artist. So then when they come into my studio, I'm more intimidated by people when they have questions, I tend to get sometimes a little flustered when I don't have an answer for an adult about my studio. Yeah. Like that's what you should know everything about your studio.
Yeah, well.
But at the same time, there's so many different aspects to printmaking. Whereas with the kids have great questions too. But the thing is, they're a sponge. They want to know information. And like I had a kid who he wanted me to draw. He printed a wolf head that I had carved, but he asked me to draw him a wolf, like the body.
Right.
And this is the most intimidated I've ever been by a kid, because I was like, oh, okay. And so I started to try to draw, and it basically just looked like sausage legs and, like a balloon animal almost. And then I kind of handed it to the kid, and he just kind of looked at me, and he just kind of tilted his head, and he goes, I thought you could draw. Oh. This is like a 7-year-old kid. And
my gosh.
I got different. So I'm like, well, but I didn't have I was trying to draw. I need to see it. I'm a visual person. And then I take the wolf head thing, and I put it down, put another piece of paper, and I start trying to draw better. Uh-huh. And I'm just like, oh man, I can't draw. And then I hand it back to the kid. I'm like, is that better? And he just kind of looked at me disappointed.
Oh man.
But it was so funny though, because it's like the kid, I mean, that kind of shows the kid has an expectation. Uh-huh. But I'm at their level, I'm not trying to go, oh yes, I will draw the best wolf ever and do that. It's like, I'll draw with the kids, and then I'll go, that, you're drawing better than I was. And I actually showed a kid one of the little drawings I did as a kid, and she's like, oh, that's really good. And it was almost like she was giving me the pep talk, you draw good. Uh-huh. But it's really funny, because if the kid knows that you're not perfect or you're not great, mm-hmm. and that they can do something maybe as good as you uh-huh. or better, or you just kind of play with them at that level in terms of skills, they trust you more.
Yeah.
And they don't, I had a kid who, she was drawing, she really wanted to draw, because I was going to make block prints based on the kids' drawings of animals. And so she looked at what we were doing, asked questions, and I said, well, if you want to draw, mm-hmm. I'll make one of these for you, one of these block prints. So she runs over the table, and then she sat there trying to figure out what to draw. And so I helped another kid, and I came back and checked on her, and she still hadn't drawn anything. I'm like, what, aren't you going to draw an animal or something? She goes, I don't know what to draw yet. It's like, well, just draw yourself, draw me. And she kind of giggles, and then I go back to helping another kid, come back. She still hasn't drawn anything. Uh-huh. So then I go, okay, I grab a piece of paper, I look at her, and I move the paper so it's out of my sight. So I do a blind contour drawing of her. So basically I'm staring at her, and I just tell her, I'm drawing your forehead. Now I'm doing your ear. Now I'm doing your cheek, your mouth. And she's looking at me and then looking down at the drawing that I'm doing. Uh-huh. And I don't know if it's going good or not. Uh-huh. She's kind of looking, kind of smirks, looks back at me. And so then I draw it, and I almost finish. And I go, and you're going to have huge eyebrows. And I start scribbling huge eyes. And I'm like, and it's not going to look like you. And then I finish it. I look at it. I'm like, yep, that's a blind contour drawing. All right. And I hand it to her. And she's like, that's cool. And I sign it. I just give it to her. And I'm like, okay, draw something for me. So I come back. I'm working with some kids. She comes over, and she has this beautiful little drawing of a pig. And I have it here, but the pig has a hat, has little legs. And she was like, so I want to draw a pig. And then I was going to do the legs, but the legs weren't right. So then I moved it here. And then he looked cold, so I put a hat on him. And she gave me a whole story about this uh-huh. little pig that she had just drawn. And so I had her give it a name. Then later on, when I was cleaning up at the end of the day, I saw that the drawing that I had done, that I had given her, uh-huh. she or somebody else had gone and drawn in the rest of the face.
Oh.
And so I'm like, if that was her, she went from not being able to figure out what to draw uh-huh. to being really enthusiastic about something that she had made, to possibly finishing a drawing that I had done. And so I've cut her block, I've printed it, and it's funny. It's just like, I so much prefer the honesty of kids and the sort of anything's possible attitude of a kid than I do to adults. But wow. Short answer, long.
That's okay. That was cool.
When I have the adults come into the studio and everything, I probably learn more from them than vice versa. And my whole thing is just trying to have that space available for people.
It seems like printmaking is a more communal activity.
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
more of a community thing than many forms of art. And I never got into printmaking. It's like the one thing I haven't yet taken up yet. I mean, you may get there. Yeah. Why is it? What is it about printmaking that makes it a community effort thing, a community activity?
In a lot of cases, it's just the availability of having a press. Because the biggest thing about printmaking is you have to have a facility to do it. I mean, like welding or sculpture or something. There's different forms of sculpture or whatever where you can be at home and find pieces of wood, nail them together, and you can build something, and it's called a sculpture.
Right.
It's the essence of what you're doing is sculpture. But if you were doing ironwork, you need tools. You probably need a torch, things that you don't just find. And printmaking, it has aspects where you could do woodblock printing by hand. All you need is a wooden spoon and some carving tools, which you can buy. So you can do printmaking at home. But people don't stumble upon making prints that much. When you're a kid or in school, you might do potato prints or rubber stamp prints. Or linoleum blocks. That seems to be something, those three things tend to be what I hear as people's introduction to printmaking. But then most printmakers they become printmakers when they're in college, because there's a facility in the art department with a 1,500-pound press, and you learn etching, or you learn screen printing, or woodblock, or lithography, or letterpress. But so much of that involves having the equipment. Like, nobody just does letterpress on their own at home, because you need all the little pieces of lead type. You don't make that yourself. You have to get that somewhere else.
Right.
And so I think the main thing is, printmaking is something that you learn either at an art center or at college, really. And to continue that on, you have to find a place that has it. And that place, you have to share the presses.
Yeah.
And you have to learn how to kind of be a community member. Whereas if you're a painter, you can set up an easel and you can do it at home. You don't have places where people generally have to be for painting, unless it's like you have a model, so you have a drawing or painting sort of gathering, and you have the model for 3 hours or something.
Right.
That's when something like painting can be communal, but you're really probably not interacting or talking to each other because you're focusing. Printmaking, we talk, we drink, we listen to music, we hang out. It's very communal.
Yeah. How many people are involved usually in like Print Zero? How many people do you have? How many tenants do you have? Nowadays,
probably like maybe about 6. And the thing is, I never have more than maybe 3 people in there at one time, because we all have 1 or 2 jobs and other things going on in life. So it's probably about 6 people. But in the past, I had to have, I think, 12 people just to cover rent.
Right.
And I have a lot of people who will be part of the studio for a couple months, get a project done, or just kind of get back into it. And then they might drop out, but then they might come back later.
Yeah. It seems like you've mixed photography and printmaking in some interesting ways. Like it's like with your scanning thing. You've got these things that have these multiple process stages to them. Why is that appealing to you?
I was kind of going through a box of artwork that I had done 20 years ago. And I realized the through line for all of it is I'm interested in documenting things, recording fact, but I like altering things a little bit with time. So I discovered David Hockney's photo collages when I was probably 21, 22, 23 years old. And he would photograph a space, a house or a person, and again, film camera, so not digital. He would print out the photos and he would collage them together. So you would have this slightly distorted yet accurate or realistic image that would come of it. So you had a person's face, but maybe in the photo collage they end up having 3 eyes, or they have a lip, and then the lips kind of moved a little off to the side. And it's just this idea of sort of layering. And what I discovered in my printmaking was that because I'm not great at drawing, I really relied on my photography to inform my drawing, or to inform my printmaking. And then as I really kind of honed in on what I was interested in with my photography, which is basically documenting textures and surfaces and colors that were on the side of buildings. So you would see all this graffiti and think, oh, it's ugly, it's just this terrible thing. But if you get 1 inch off the surface, there's all these little tiny worlds and micro or macro landscapes. So that's what I have photographed for 15 years. And they're these beautiful, scaleless, hard to figure out, it's a literal thing, but it's so abstract, and we recognize elements, but we don't know what it is, and then we don't know the scale. So that's the type of photography I do, but I'm starting to figure out what printmaking methods that I can maybe take those photos and then make these abstract color prints. So it's like, you give me a camera, I make abstract work. You give me a piece of paper, I need the camera to be able to make, I need a literal reference. So I think I'm kind of wired into merging the two. And like you were saying, the scanner element, I've been scanning my face. So as the scanner light, kind of the bar or whatever kind of goes across, I'll have my face down and I'll kind of move my face or roll my face on the scanner bed. And what's happening, and what I'm interested in, is the scanner is recording fact or truth or what it sees, but you can manipulate that truth with time. So that scanner bar might take 10 seconds to go across. So you can move within that space, but alter the time a little bit.
Right.
And you get these really interesting sort of Mercator map sort of images. But then also you have light leaks, and you can do other things that alter how the image comes out. And I guess scanography is yet another sub community of photography. But I got really interested kind of in doing that. So I've been doing these 4-color CMYK screen prints based on the scanners, scanner portraits. And then I may go in and alter those with different types of inks, or I don't know, maybe like something that you can only see with a black light. So I'm kind of getting more and more interested in that combination of photography and then handwork into pieces, and really kind of merging the two. And there's some really interesting printmaking techniques that focus on texture, where I think the photography I've recently been doing will translate really well. So I'm pretty excited about what direction, whichever way that is, that happens in the next year or two.
Cool. Well, how do you manage to work it in, your personal art with all these other projects? Do you schedule it in? Do you have like a...
probably the best thing for me, honestly, is to have a deadline put on me. Because I'm really good at being at productively procrastinating. So when I have a deadline, I might clean the studio real well or organize letterpress furniture by size when I really need to be getting a print done. And like the print that I was showing you for this horn-toed prints exchange, I did a 4-color CMYK screen print, and I had known about this project being due for probably 5 months. I'd paid my registration fee 2 months earlier. I did the print like 4 days before it was due to be in El Paso.
Right.
So I printed it in the course of like 3 hours. I printed an edition of about 20 of these from like 8 o'clock at night until midnight. And then first thing in the morning, I shipped them off so they got there on the due date.
Yeah.
This is, for me, a really successful print.
This is one of your scanned. This is a scan.
Yeah,
right?
so I scanned. There's 2 images. The one that's on the left side is my face, probably about 2 inches off the scanner. So I'm not really fully recognizable. I'm kind of out of focus. And then the next image, I'm right on the scanner, and it's probably about a 7 by 10 inch print, and it's called Dissonance. And
is this one on your website? Do you have this?
Not yet. It will be very soon.
Okay, because this is an awesome image. It's almost I'm not sure if this is the print process or the scanning process or the mixture of both, but there's a slight almost pixelation to it. The colors are distinct. It's very distinctive. It's a really interesting process.
That's the CMYK process.
Okay.
So that's the halftone image.
Gotcha.
And you print layer by layer. So it has a very strong photographic element to it, but also because you're hand printing, screen printing, there's elements that of imperfection. And also in the scan, there's one area where there's a lot of red that kind of infiltrated the image, and it's sort of almost like noise, like when like static on a TV. And so with the CMYK, the cyan, magenta, yellow, black printing process, what I really enjoy about these is that you do have these kind of malfunctions in trying to translate a photographic scan into the CMYK process for screen printing. And so, again, that's just like, there's different streaks from where the light bar went across, where there was either more or less contact. So you kind of get a feeling of handwork in these than just the photograph.
Right.
And that's kind of what I find interesting. But with the Dissonance, it's sort of a mood thing, and it's been kind of a little bit. It's basically kind of about the we've had a lot of homeless issues around town and social issues, and so it was sort of that personal feelings on things where sometimes I feel very concerned about things, but then I also have no association or understanding of some of the issues that are going on. And so that sense of being in focus and then out of focus.
So I'm going to ask you a hard question right now. And you've had experience with kids and with it. Why do people make art? Why do you think people make art?
I don't know if that's a hard question. I think the harder question is, how do people process their feelings without creativity? So I somehow found art probably in elementary school, but I think the reason I make art is because we can talk, and I can tell you that I like something, I don't like something, or I can explain my opinion. But creativity allows you to have that conversation when nobody else is around. So it's a way to process feelings, emotions. I mean, how many songs are there about love and about hate and about breakups? I mean, country music is all about getting drunk and being broken up with.
Yeah.
But what if those country singers couldn't sing or play an instrument? How would they process that?
Yeah.
I mean, they can tell their buddy about it, but at some point their buddy's probably going to be like, don't talk to me anymore.
Right.
I don't care. Drink your beer.
Right.
But creativity is how we process, how we try to understand things. And I don't understand, or I can't comprehend how people deal with grief. Like when my dad passed away, I was trying to figure it out. Uh-huh. But the day that I found out, I took pictures while I was driving down to my parents' house. I took pictures of the sky. Mm-hmm. I remember the music I was listening to, which just happened to be the CD that was, or the cassette tape or whatever that was in my car at the time. I went for a long walk around her neighborhood. I remember the visual things. Like, I remember so much from that day. And then the crazy thing that happened was my dad had thinning hair, so we always joked about, with me, I always had short hair. And so he always kind of gave me a grief about, like, oh, you should comb your hair this way, or you do this or that. And he was a banker. Like, he, there's this equals that. Right. So that was his process for thinking out everything. So when it came time for his funeral, I was still trying to, process things, but everything was in a creative vein. So I did a drawing of him on a napkin, and I was kind of timid about doing it because I didn't want anyone to come in. Right. Because here I am doing an art thing, but this is how I had to deal with it. Right. And then when I felt his, open casket, right. It doesn't look real. It's a really hard thing to go through. Yeah. And then I felt his hair, and his hair was still soft. And that's when I just absolutely lost it, and I just started crying, which I hadn't been able to do before. Yeah. And so then and I still haven't done this, and it's been 14 years, but what I've always wanted to do was take the drawing that I did of him, and then I started growing my hair out. Mm. So when he passed, it was right around the time that I would have probably shaved or cut my hair. And because of the funeral and because of our kind of ongoing joke, I didn't cut my hair. And then I had heard something about when you're grieving, I think it was in some aspect of Judaism, you don't shave while in mourning. Mm-hmm. And so I just decided not to cut my hair for a little while, for the first time ever. And so I let my hair grow for 7 years. Mm. And so I took some of my hair and I finally cut it, and that hair I put off to the side, and what I want to do from the drawing is make a cast, like a paper casting, and then sew the hair in and kind of have this like permanent piece about my dad and about this, it's a very subtle thing, hair. Yeah. But that meant everything. And so that's like, it took me a while to figure out, but that was sort of the creative process helping me through things. And, and there's been a lot of things that have happened, like 9/11 happened. Right. I took pictures and I did drawings and I wrote some words down, but everything else was like trying to hold on to the moment and figure out what you see, what you smell, what you hear, and put that together. Yeah. So, I mean, creativity, I think it's a better way to process things, in my opinion. Yeah, well, mine too. So that's why we're here. Well, thank you very much for that story. That was beautiful, and I hope you get around to doing that someday, because that'll be awesome. Yeah. I just have to learn how to cast paper. There you go. Well, I mean, add it to the list. You've got a pretty good. Wait, what do you have going? You have nothing else to do. Yeah, right? I know. Well, I guess let me go ahead and ask you about what do you have going right now? Do you have any current projects that you're working on? Anything? You're still in the middle of kind of the Auburn Kids project, right? Yeah. So I have I've been taking the drawings that kids do. Because we did a thing called an Exquisite Corpse, or as I was calling it for the kids, build an animal. Yeah. And so basically there's a tradition of artistically where somebody would do like a drawing of a head, and then you fold the paper and then somebody draws a body not seeing what the head looked like, and then you fold the paper and somebody else draws the legs. So what you get is a weird combination of head, body, legs, and it might be person or it might be animals. And so I took that idea, I carved animals, cut the heads, and then the kids were printing different combinations. So it might be a turtle with a llama head, or it might be a dog with a cat head, or with a shark tail or whatever.
So they were involved in the actual printing part of the process too.
Right.
Yeah.
And so basically I did that with the kids, and then I would ask them what type of animal they made and give it a name and whatnot. And then then I started having them actually draw animals for me, and I told them that I would carve those into blocks,
right,
and they could come back and they could print those. Kids got super excited. They did that. And so I've done about 75 of these little tiny blocks, animal blocks. And what I found was I got really, really inspired by their sort of innocence of just drawing. And you know, as an adult, you do something and you mess up, and all you can think about is how you did something wrong.
Right.
And the kids don't have that yet. They just draw. They might not think it's great, but that doesn't stop them from doing it. And so then I really kind of found the beauty in what they were doing with, you know, they're not drawing animals the right way, but you see some patterns in what they kind of understand animals to be.
Right.
And so I just started drawing or started carving all these blocks, and then I would like to make my own version of some of these like kids drawings. Maybe I have to draw left-handed to kind of have some of the same imperfections in drawing. But now I understand that animals can have 7 legs, or they can have, you know, elements of being a dinosaur, or maybe, you know, they can be half robot, half cat or something. So it's like, it's just really kind of, it's a freeing of not having the restrictions.
Right.
And so it's like I have those 2 projects. I have my photography stuff, which I just showed in July at Gallery 110. So I want to keep pushing that because I have a gallery in Chicago that shows my work. So trying to get a show again out there. I have a letterpress project I want to do about bad dates that I'm super excited about. So that could be something. I have a lot of ideas, and I have the scanner project as well. But I think a lot of it is just, I'll just keep moving between projects, and I'll keep writing ideas down. And I mean, there's tons of political and social things that I've wanted to do, but it's almost like I need to stay in a positive place. So I haven't done those. But yeah.
It is super easy to go off down in a bad place right now if you're not careful. It's super easy to just go right down that. And I mean, I guess you have to go there sometimes, but I don't know. You can't stay there. I've found. When the Charlottesville stuff happened, that happened the day that I was doing this kids project with the printing and everything, and I didn't know about this until about 36 hours after it happened. And so that entire week, I just sort of got off social media. Like I was still paying attention to it, right?
And I really wanted to share with everybody about these animals, but that incident was so terrible that I didn't want to post these, you know, kind of child art, you know, pictures and, oh, I did this great thing, because it was just, everything in the world seemed so heavy at that moment. But I just spent all my free time working on carving these blocks for these kids, just so I could kind of balance out my my frustration with what was going on in the world, but then also just kind of still having a positive thing that I was doing.
Right.
And I know not everybody, I mean, the politics and the social atmosphere, there's a lot of different takes on it.
Right.
And I just am trying to, like, I want to make work about that, but I really want to also kind of keep myself in a good place by not putting all my time and energy into the negativity. So
I think it's important. I mean, everybody's got their opinion, right? But I mean, that's one of the reasons why I started doing this podcast. I had a solo show open at Virago Gallery in West Seattle the day after the election happened.
Oh,
the opening was that night. It was a almost surreal experience. Because the work I did was really bright. This is not it, but it was super, like kind of futuristic and optimistic, but bright. And it was just, why?
Yeah.
You had to ask yourself, why do art in the face of, and regardless of which side you fall on, there's a lot of cruelty out there. There's a lot of bad stuff.
Yeah.
Why do we make art in the face of all this bad stuff? Can we look at these children's but you have to, right? I mean, that's what it's about. That's what you want. You know what I mean? You have to keep adding that to the world. If you give up adding the good stuff to the world, then the other will just overwhelm.
Well, and I've seen I know so many artists, and you can see a lot of artists, they're dipping their toe in kind of politics and social issues with their art.
Right.
And I did I curated an art show about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was a printmaking show, and had a really great title that I can't remember right now, but it had to do with you are a person, you are different, and the entire show it tackled mental health, race, gender, marriage equality, sexuality. It was a really expansive look at printmakers tackling different, basically identity issues.
Yeah.
And it's just a component of who we are, not, the banner that we hang saying I'm this or I'm that. And it was a really powerful show. And I'm really, that was one of my proudest moments of putting together a show. Like, one piece sold. I didn't expect necessarily to have any of the work sell. That wasn't the point. I kind of put in a exhibition together, maybe more so than a gallery show where the goal is to try to make money.
Right.
And I had to do a ton of editing because there were so many printmakers that make really phenomenal, important work. And printmaking is such a communication medium.
Yeah.
You have a revolution. I mean, there's countries, I think Nicaragua, if I'm not mistaken, didn't really have a lot of printmaking presses in country because that was this sort of rogue way to disseminate information. Yeah. And so when Print Zero did a show in Nicaragua back in, I don't know, probably like 2007, 2008, right around then, that was to my understanding, one of the earlier shows that had been done of printmaking. That's only 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And that was at one of the university, I think in Manoa, and it was just like, I didn't know. When they had a revolution, they said government didn't want there to be printing available because that informs people,
right.
And it can be reproduced, and you can disseminate a lot of it. You can't disseminate more than one painting.
Right.
It's one, and that's it.
Right.
So yeah, that's the power of printmaking, and I think that's why so many people, you can jump in, do a quick print, make 100 of them, move on to the next print. A painting might take months. A print might take hours, or a couple days, or a week. But it's there, and the purpose is for more people to see it.
Yeah.
And so it is the ultimate medium to be able to do stuff about politics and whatnot. So, like it or not, it's something that I think we all kind of dip our toe in and participate in that commentary. So. Yeah.
Well, it's there are times when it's harder not to do that than others, and this is a pretty heated time for that sort of thing. But okay, well, I guess we'll wrap up here. Is there anything else you'd like to say to us, or?
I guess if I can plug the website.
Absolutely. Where can we find more of your work?
So all spelled out, it's printzerostudios.com. I have the kids projects on there. So there's a projects tab or artwork tab on the website, and you can see more about the kids projects, about my artwork, about our print exchanges that we do. studio info. And then if you're in Chicago, the Chicago Art Source Gallery carries my photography. Or if you're at Inkscape, I'm in the basement right by the elevator. Knock on the door, or it might be open, and just come say hello.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining us. This has been an awesome conversation.
Yeah, fantastic. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Brian, and thank you, listeners, for joining us. Be sure to follow and like us on your favorite podcast services, including iTunes and Stitcher. And note, we love reviews, so please let us know how we're doing. You can find out more about Original Lines on www.twoponiespress.com or on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. See you next time.